Hi, my name is Sammy. I just bought a Canon ProGraph 300 and I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I've gotten into printing photos from home. I remember when I got my first camera, I was so excited to go out and print my first couple of photos. So I went to the little kiosk at CVS and I picked out some of my best shots and I went out and I got them printed and they came out like awful, just like laughably like unusably bad. I remember I took a photo of some like a little bunch of red flowers and the flowers just came out on the print as just like one like solid red blob. Like you couldn't even distinguish the flowers from each other, even though it was just like a clear picture of flowers on my computer screen. So then I was like, all right, you got me. Like CVS, not the place to print like high quality photography photos. So I went online and I really did my research and I looked at a bunch of different online photo labs, different places where you could get digital pictures developed. And I wound up settling on this website called MPix. It's not, now that I know a little bit more about the space, I know there are some other websites that would probably print even more high quality photos, but I at least went to a website that was known by real photographers to get at least pretty good prints. The prints came out way better than the prints from CVS, but right away I noticed a couple of big problems. The first problem that I noticed was that even when I uploaded the files to the website, they wouldn't let me upload full resolution files. So I had taken these like really high resolution photos on like my nice DSLR camera, exported them like uncompressed to PNG. They were like 20 megabytes on my computer. And then when I went to upload them to MPix, like the interface on MPix automatically converted them to 2 megabyte files. So I know right away I'm not getting the full image quality of what I uploaded. I also know that I was printing pretty big, so it's not like they just compressed it because it was like 300 dpi of like a 2 by 4 inches like not going to show up. Like I was printing large enough print sizes that it should have been able to resolve the full resolution of the files that I was uploading. Alright, so the next thing that I noticed was even though the photos themselves weren't like crazy expensive, the website had a minimum purchase requirement for shipping that was something like, I think like $20 or $30. So even if I wanted to just get like a few 4x6 photos printed out and it would be like 50 cents or something like that, like I couldn't just go on their website and do that because of the minimum purchase requirement. And even a step further than that, right? You have to sit around and you have to wait for these photos to actually be shipped, which is like, you never want to wait for stuff. But it also means that you kind of take more time to think about what you want to get printed, and like you really have to decide what you're going to do before you do it. It's not this like low friction process. All right, and so finally the image quality. So image quality was much better than the photos that I was getting at CVS. It was definitely like a big improvement. But even though the photos were good, they were never exactly what I wanted them to be. So the first thing that happened is I sent them to MPix to get them printed and told them to just use my files and not make any adjustments. And all of the photos came out way too dark because looking at something on print is obviously like way darker than looking at something on a computer screen. So without any adjustments, the photos just like came out bad and they came out not what I wanted them to look like I think in large part because of the differences between viewing things on print and viewing things on a monitor. And then, of course, when this happened, like, not only did I get like, a couple bad photos that I didn't like, but remember there's this minimum purchase requirement for shipping. So not only did I get like photos that I didn't like, but I got $30 worth of photos that I didn't like, because all of the photos in the batch didn't look exactly the way that I wanted them to. All right, so then I tried it again and I was like, okay. Like, things look different on print than on a monitor. Like, these people are print experts, like, they'll do the right thing. I should just kind of give them the photos, let them do whatever they want with it, let them do all the processing, and it'll probably come out pretty good. And what happened was it did come out better. Like, I think that I enjoyed the prints more overall, but they looked nothing like the way that I intended them to look. So when I had them make the auto adjustments, like, they were, like, bright enough that you could see them, and like, probably to somebody that like didn't care that much, like, they'd probably be like passively fine. But a lot of the photos were like super oversaturated, or they just had a different feel and a different look and a different style than what I was going for when I took and edited the image. And again, I had this batch of photos where I didn't really like them, right? So then I had ordered another batch of photos. I still had to wait for them. It was annoyingly expensive. I mean, maybe not like crazy expensive in terms of what people pay for photography gear. But at this point, I was pretty frustrated, and I didn't want to go, I guess, like one more cycle of ordering prints, spending $30, waiting to see if they came out the way that I wanted them to, and then trying again. And so I was like, fuck it, like, I'll just buy my own printer and I can probably like do a pretty good job. So that's when I looked up my cheap $100 inkjet office printer, and I found something really surprising. Even though it wasn't a photo printer, if you put the settings on the ultra maximum best print quality, the inkjet printer that I already had at home could already print things at over 1000 DPI. It even had a function where you can set up color sync with Lightroom to get really accurate colors in terms of matching what's on the print to what's in your monitor. And if you were willing to kind of set your printer to the maximum settings and wait like 3 minutes for it to come up with like a 4x6 print, you could actually get very, very good results. It turns out that most inkjet printers, even the really cheap ones, have the ability to print really high quality photos, but it's off by default because it uses up too much ink and it takes too long. So I bought some really nice photo paper and some cheap replacement inks, and I was actually getting better results than I was getting from the photo lab. Obviously they took a really long time to print, but certainly nowhere near as long as the amount of time to wait for something to get mailed from across the country. I was getting better results that I was happier with in less time and for less money. If you have an inkjet printer at home, I think it's really the best option for most people. So I was doing this for a while and I was actually really happy with it. But since I already have, all of this kind of fancy photography gear, and I wanted to get the most out of it, and I didn't want, the bottleneck of this whole creative process to be my cheap office inkjet printer. I was like, okay, let's like really kind of push things as far as I can. And so I went out and I got a really nice photography printer. I really wanted to get one of those big 44-inch large format printers, but unfortunately they're way too heavy and I couldn't transport one into my apartment during COVID. So I got a ProGraph Pro 300. It was sort of a compromise for me. It wasn't as big of a printer that I wanted, but it's certainly like bigger than your standard US letter paper. In terms of print quality, the dedicated photo printer is better. Like, I definitely like notice that the prints that I'm getting for it, like once I kind of set things up and calibrate everything correctly, are like slightly better than what I'm getting from, you know, my cheap office inkjet printer, but they're not that much better. You know, I'm still a little bit unsure if it was really worth it to go out and get this really expensive photo printer just in terms of print quality alone. Now it does make bigger prints though, and obviously that I still like. So is it worth printing your photos at home? In my opinion, yes, absolutely. And the reason is that you get to see how your photos are going to physically look on paper. And so you can really like print your photos out, make adjustments, and kind of iterate through your creative process to get everything exactly right. All right, so most people that I know have like a cheap office inkjet color printer. And if you have one of those, like, I think that for most people, you're gonna get better results printing from home, even with just like the equipment that you already have, than you would get from going out and printing to a photo lab. If you really need like very big prints, or you really need to, you know, kind of go that extra mile, getting your own printer is always like, you know, like really nice. Like it's nice to have. It's nice to have, but I feel like it's not really necessary for most people. Also, if you have a local photo lab, like somewhere that you can go that has, you know, really good equipment and good staff, and where you can really like print sample photos and see what your photos are going to look like on actual paper, I think that's also a pretty good option for most people. Now obviously, like, you know, there's ICC profiles, and you can, you know, calibrate your monitor and do all kinds of stuff to like guess what the photo is going to look like when it gets printed out. But I find that for me, to really like understand it fully, like I really need to see it printed out on actual paper. And so just like having a printer at home and being able to iterate reasonably quickly, like I don't need to have printouts every like 30 seconds, but not having to wait like 4 days of back and forth for like things to get shipped and readjusted makes a really big difference for me. Also, another thing to keep in mind is sometimes prints from inkjet printers fade a little bit more quickly than some of the really high-end printers. So if you're making like, you know, if you're like selling prints as like fine art or to an art gallery, like, you know, maybe invest in using a nicer printer. So yeah, printing photos from home, 10 out of 10. Would recommend. Definitely would really strongly recommend just using a cheap office inkjet printer and using cheap ink and, you know, decent photo paper, and I think you'll get pretty good results. All right, thanks for watching my video and hearing my long rambling opinions. I'm gonna make another video after this comparing the cheap inkjet printer that I have to the much more expensive dedicated photo printer that I have, to kind of give you an idea of, you know, like how much better the photo printer is, and hopefully help you decide if it's worth it for you.